Hello, so welcome to Maritime Logistics for week 11. The topic will be about port logistics, the overview. And this week you are going to learn about several things about port logistics, like the concept and also the port operators, the development of port and also the challenges of the port, and container ports, about the process at the container terminals and also the top layers. I assume that you have already studied about port in infrastructure logistics last semester. So in this maritime logistics course, I will explain you about port logistics. The port logistics itself, the definition is the seaport links into a transport chain providing door-to-door service. So it's not only the port itself, but also the connection to the logistics activities. And as you can remember about our first meeting, I think the first week of maritime logistics course, I show you about the maritime logistics systems. This is the flow chart, and remember about you have the primary activities and the secondary activities, and the flow of the maritime logistics systems. As you know, it starts from the shipper, and then after that the shipper can decide whether they will use the freight forwarders to ship their cargo, or they will directly contact the shipping lines. And then after that, the shipping lines, as the customer of the ports, or in this case port operators, as one of the maritime logistics operator, and so port operators, they will provide service for the shipping lines, and also the next will be for the connections to the multimodal or the inland connections. And now we are focusing on the port operators itself. Okay, for the port logistics and for port development itself, it is being driven by the market research. So port is always developing from time to time. And the port authorities and the ship owners, they are also changing their working methods to meet the changing market conditions. And I have several development of port management here, and this is according to Alderton. The stages of development of the port, it consists of 4 stages. Before 1960, it is called as the first generation, and then 1960s to 1970s, it's the second generation, and then 1980s is the third generation, and then after the 90s is the fourth generation. Okay, so for the first generation, this is this part of the phase of the port management. Port merely function as a cargo interface location between sea and land transport. For what? For cargo transfer from ship to shore, and then also from shore to ship. And the port operation itself is usually separated from trade related activities, and different port activities, they are also not in the port itself, and they are isolated from one another. And so in a simple sentence, for before the 1960s, the first generation of port, it is the function of the port is only for cargo interface location. Ya, hanya untuk pertemuan kargo dari kapal ke darat atau dari darat ke kapal. And then from the 1960s to 1970s, the second generation, this is a transport and commercial service center. So all port-related activities, they are integrated to enjoy a closer relationship with transport and also trade partners. So it's like jadi kayak pabrik atau supplier atau customer itu sudah mulai didekatkan ke pelabuhan supaya kegiatan trade atau perdagangan atau jual beli itu jadi lebih cepat. Di situ sudah mulai. And then 1980s, this is the third generation. Because of the containerization and also intermodalism development, port can be seen as a hub of international production and also for distribution networks. And in this third generation, the port adds value to primary production is commercially oriented. So, karena adanya mulai intermodal dan juga kontainerisasi dari tahun 1980, jadi sudah mulai ini door-to-door service dan udah mulai port itu menjadi tempat komersial. And then the last phase, which is the fourth generation. Now we are in the fourth generation after the 90s. This phase is focused on standardization of information and procedures due to the globalization among the global shipping and also among the terminal operators. So in this phase, the port also considers more aspects, not only commercial but also environmental aspects. So port is not only for commercial activities for international trade, but also they focus on how to save or how to reduce pollution, and also how to make every activities in the port more environmentally friendly. So this is the fourth generation, and now also more they focus on digitalization. Digitalisasi. Yeah. So more focusing on how to operate port without manpower or reduce manpower. So we substitute everything by using technology. Okay, so now as you can see before at the stages of the port development, now we can take a look at the several factors that might accelerate the change of ports. The first one is the port privatization. This port privatization is always growing. And what does it mean? What is the definition of port privatization? So this port privatization is a transferring a business or a service from public to private ownership and also to private control. Jadi yang tadinya dari service atau port milik negara itu diserahkan ke pihak swasta untuk dioperasikan atau bahkan untuk dimiliki ya. Nah, tapi kalau untuk di Indonesia itu biasanya bukan untuk dimiliki, tapi hanya untuk mengoperasikan. Nah, this port privatization is always growing because governments, they globally contract out the ownership and management of their ports, particularly or especially those dealing with containers. Jadi mostly ini yang diserahkan ke sektor swasta itu adalah port-port yang handling containers. Because container business is a large-scale business, right? And they also have large vessels. So the operation will be more difficult than the other types of terminal or like the bulk ports. And this port privatization, because it is growing, so you can see as an example, there is a PSA, Port of Singapore Global Port Operators. Jadi mungkin saja dia milik Singapura tapi dia mengoperasikan port di negara lain. Nah, itu yang menyebabkan perubahan dari port. And then of course the growth of trade from India, from Brazil, from China, and also from Russia. This is also driving the port modernization. And as you can see, right now China has the biggest volume of the biggest throughput for the containers. They have several big ports, and also the trade itself, it is always growing from China. So it is also changing the size or the physical or the management of ports itself. And containerization, as in since 1980s, it is growing, more developing around the world and more demand. So this containerization, sometimes they also need large vessels. So that's why with large vessels they need a large berthing size or large key. So that's why the ports also expanding their berth their berthing area, so mega ships they can accommodate mega ships to unload or loading containers in that port. And also the logistics itself. Logistics is a growing activities also. So not only for from the ship to the shore, but also ports also changing with how they connect these logistics activities with the inland transport. So they will support these logistics activities. And one of the example is by building or establishing access to the railway services. And then the LNG market, it is also growing in this, I think the last 20 or 10 years ago. So LNG is not only distributed by pipe, but now also the demands also being transported by vessels. And then also the innovation will accelerate the change of ports, because more days ports they demand with autonomous material handling, so less manpower needed at the ports. And the transshipment, it means that from one for example one mothership or one large vessel being transferred to the smaller vessels or to a barge vessel. So this is like a transshipment, and it can occur at the port area. Jadi dari satu kapal besar ke kapal kecil mentransferkan kargo. Jadi itu namanya transshipment. Nah, and then